India, East India, or Northeast India, or West India, you will find a commonality between the tribal group as well as the differences. And there are some similarity in the form of they have their own language, so particularly, and it depends upon the project similarly, whether it is they are doing farming or whether they are doing animal husbandry as such. And it is very fascinating to know that in various such similarity or dissimilarity, and very, very peculiar and noticeable particularly differences as well. And the differences, particularly if you look into it, is on the basis of geographical area where they have migrated. So on that basis, particularly, we find the differences in the culture, differences in the food pattern, differences in the language as well. And when we talked about particularly uh, Rajasthan and tribes, particularly. In the state of Rajasthan, particularly, the tribes are said to be the original habitat of the state, and they are called as the native actually. And these tribal groups actually, in the tribal groups, the Rajasthan state particularly comprises about around 12% only, and of the total population of the state. And the major focus area, concentration area, particular tribal looked into, majorly in the foothill of Vindhya and the Aravalli mountain range, you will find the tribal groups settled state. And according to 2011 census, there are, I have already mentioned, 12 percent scheduled tribal group live there, as well as there are 12 tribals also live there. Among the tribal population of Rajasthan, particularly, Bhili tribe occupy a major position in the culture, in the population, in the lifestyle. And another major tribal group of the Rajasthan is Meena. And besides Meena, there are Damo, there are Dhanka, Sakshia, there are Kathuri, there are Kulli, there are Thor, there are Naikoda, there are Sheheria. Okay, there are different tribal groups you find, particularly in Rajasthan. And when you look into the particularly the film tribals, when we talked about Bhili tribal group particularly, it is the biggest. They have the biggest population as well as they consider they are the particularly indigenous in nature as well as they are talking about they are the particularly the native people of Rajasthan. Their origin is mainly from the Dravidian family group. Uh, they particularly the name Bhili, it is derived from the Dravidian word they talked Bhiliwala, and which means archer. So you look into their culture, there are much more games they have associated with. Archery is one of the famous game as well as it is a way of life, particularly in the context of their occupation, particularly engaged with different hunting activities in the forest. And this hill population of Rajasthan particularly is distributed entirely in the particular district of Banswara, Dungar, Dulgarpur, Udaipur, and the whole area of the southwest Rajasthan. And their traditional, as I mentioned, they are more with the hunting activity as they are part of the archery skill. And they mostly speak their own language, which they call as Vili. And their dialect mostly associated with Indo-Aryan language, and as well as it is now mixed up with the Rajasthani, Gujarati, Hindi, and Marathi words. So we look into a mixture of all the languages you find in their telecommunication. Though they are excellent warrior, they know the archery particularly, particularly associated it with for their daily livelihood, and mainly they also engage with farming, field, particularly they isolate the village wasmen, and they know known for that. And most of the local villagers, those who are particularly those who are wealthy they have, and they recruit them as watchmen, night watchmen, and they particularly observe Hindu duties, and they follow the Hinduism as well, and their culture is so rich, it is so indigenous, it is so traditional, and there is a called dance. They have a one dance form, is Ghumar, and I think different Hindi film has its representation as well, and in one the popular aspect of Bili culture. So there another song is also important. They called it Swan. So these two fest, particularly song and dance, actually they general day-to-day activity engaged with. And the custom of this Bili tribes display a distinct feature or character you can talk about that goes with the rustic but ethnic lifestyle. Generally, Hilly Tribe consider a entertaining community for its dance and song, who maintain their socio-cultural association with the society, with the community, and they are mostly associated with the Hindu. They are mostly into the warrior field. They are mostly depend upon the forest, so we make it. And there is another tribal group, they called it Garasiya. And this Garasiya tribe, particularly of Rajasthan, spread all over the region, and particularly you will find in Udaipur, Pali, and Sirohi district. And despite if you look into their socioeconomic, they lived in poverty mostly because this the tribal group are particularly in order to make life more enjoyable and lively, particularly the people of this tribe maintain a pattern of living socially, particularly they wish to live, particularly they want to live individualistic life, and but for that reason they lived in the forest, in intense forest, and they conduct a variable feast actually, and the feast of different colors, and highlight always be with their community always, and the community dancing as well. Such in a fair, in a festival, bring people of these communities better together and begin meeting around for young and as well as old alike. And if you look into this Garcia tribal, they maintain both Hinduism and Animism. They believe in Hindu religion. However, they also worship some particularly animals as well as the natural element. And they are very hardworking, and they are primarily occupation is agriculture, cultivation. Um, Besides that, they also engage in forest, depend upon the forest for their daily livelihood. They also collect gum, bamboo, and other products from the forest. And they also depend upon the forest for like non-timber forest product. And there is another tribe, they called it Mina tribe. And this particularly, they live mostly in the areas of Amber, which is now Jaipur recently, and as well as in the east, northeast, and southeast region of particularly Rajasthan. And they belongs to they are associated with the Hindu civilization and Hindu culture, and particularly they are ranked above all rural and hilly communities for their activities, for their histories, for their status. The main gods they call them as Virun, Hanuman, Krishna, as well as there are some devis they follow. And main occupation of this Meena tribal group actually they depend upon agriculture. However, there is a division between there is a two group of Meena tribe. One is Bargaon Minaj and another is Chaukidar Minaj. And this Bargaon Minaj actually more associated with agriculture. However, Chaukidar Minaj is not associated with agriculture. And as you know, all the tribal group have their own chief, own head, own panchayat. But here they don't have anything. But they depend upon the panchayat Raj system of Government of India or the panchayat system of Government of India. And once again, they follow Hindu ceremonies as well as festival. And the famous fair you can festival you can of this travel community, Mina travel community, is referred to Tis and Gangur. And around they are more famous in their region actually, and their community usual food or social gathering needs usually indulge in song and dance during any occasion. Everybody they gather somewhere. And there is another tribe called Sehriya or Sahriya, right? They call it Sehriya or Sahriya. And this tribe of Rajasthan particularly is considered to be popular in nature of district of Kota. And you know Kota, I think. And the Sehri tribe actually were originally they are hills, but later they got their names from the British ruler, sorry, it is a Muslim ruler who gave the name of Sehriya from the word of Seva. And they do not own land, they do not own any cultivated land, they though lived in forest, but they don't have any land in their needs. They consider landless laborers particularly. They depend upon labor activity for their day-to-day livelihood. And the social condition of this area tribe is equally disappointing. You mostly find they live in poverty, lack of social securities, okay? And they live in interior jungles or the forest, which is mostly outside of the community. And their mode of life remains so traditional, static, you not find any much of change in their lifestyle. As well as kind of untouchability is also prevalent among these tribal community. And if you look into the marriage structure, marriage are performed early during childhood, and they do not follow any bygone particularly. Sorry, they do follow a forms of bygamy. They do not follow forms of monogamy. And Shahriya follow the Hindu forms of religion and believe in Hindu gods and goddess and deities. And there is another tribe called Meghawal tribe. And this Meghawal tribe actually there are various stories or narrative associated with the origin of this tribal group. The main of this community, of this Meghal community, are expert in weaving and women excelling in embroidery work. And they originally associated with training and manufacturing leather articles or leather products. And this community actually considered is originated from the Marwar region of Rajasthan, but they also prevalent in some part of Gujarat as well as some part of Pakistan out of our border. But in the present context, in the present day, the people of this community have become concerned about the importance of education. They being educated citizens, they are considered as, and they are now employed in various government jobs. If you look into the statistics of census 2011, and particularly these tribal group are hardworking. Anthropologists or sociologists and Nixon are famous for geometrical design type of different shapes and colors between their houses. And the people of this Nepal community are basically Hindu. They follow Hinduism and also said to be descendant of Rishi Meg. And they are also these people are the follower of Pir Pitharo, one of the you can talk about forms of worship, a forms of faith, a forms of religious activity. And his shrine is located near Mirpur Khas in Pithor village. And this religious socio-cultural side of the community is reflected in the custom of the so whatever they wear, the clothing pattern is always associated with the day-to-day, particularly their religious as well as they refer to their religious activity. And particularly the people of this community display wide uh, variation of clothes because every cloth represents some religious activity. And particularly the married women of this community wear a kanchli, the upper garment or top, and ghagra, like it's the ghagra in bright color with red and pink in they call it. The women wear a variety of wraps in winter, and if you look into particularly, mm, they are also fond of jewelry. And the main of the Meghalayan counterpart generally dress in white from head to toe. So particularly it is Rajasthan traditional attire you can talk about. And if you go into tribes of Uttarakhand particularly, and you'll find different forms of tribal groups, and they share with the border like you can talk about Uttar Pradesh, you can talk about Himachal, okay? And particularly if you look the origin of you can talk about the group that are registered in Uttarakhand, they are part of the Aryan tribe group, and the state of Uttarakhand particularly has rich and vast tribal population. With, every district of Uttarakhand, you will find some less or moderate percentage of tribal population, and the state in the state, the main focus of the tribal population you will find in the rural space or rural sectors, and around and major five tribes located in Uttarakhand, major five tribes, and according to census, the five tribals are particularly Chansari, Tharu, Raji, Butsa, and Bhutias, and particularly in the first days, their main focus were confined to the remote hill, the rural sectors, particularly in the forest regions. And these tribes have retained their usual traditional customs, values, dance, walkways, okay, as well as their ways of living. They preserve this, and around particularly 2 point around 3% population of the total state belongs to tribal group. The tribe called Jansari, and it is around 30% of the total tribal group, and it is very difficult to identify a Jansari tribal person because they have a physical appearance similar to the Mongol. So from the physical, you cannot particularly find out the tribal Jansari people because they belong to Mongoloid group and Mongoloid people live there, they call. And they are also one form of Indo-Aryan inhabitants of the Himalaya regions or Himalaya province. You can talk about the entire community of Jansari tribal today has been divided into different caste groups. They called Koltas, they called Khasas, okay, and these Khasas are they consider they are the earlier settlers of the region, this region of Himalayas. And passionately, if you look into, they do not have any specific forms of occupation or work for day-to-day activity, but they mostly depend upon the labor and they work on as a labor in the farms of rich peoples or possess small amount of land, and they generally do not consider, but they have some people have some animals or domestic animals. So it is a genetic importance for them as they are doing animal husbandry, which is considered second main source of livelihood for them. And if you look into the marriage ceremony particularly, it is considered was one of the integral part of the tribal community, and they follow the polyandry, and most of the festival associated with it. They they enjoy all those things, and polyandry and patrilineal form of particular family structure we find in the Indian church tribe. And there is a tribe called Tharu, and Tharu type, this particular tribe in Uttarakhand actually is considered to be the largest primitive tribe in the region. They consider, and they form around 31.29. Okay, earlier I have said that the particularly uh, the Chansari tribe has the largest number, but not they have only 30%, whereas this particularly Thoro tribe has the second first highest, which is considered around 31.9% of the tribal population of the state. And this is because of their long time settlement in these regions within the forest region, which is untouched, and they remain unaffected to outside the world, and they are unknown to the outside of the world as well. And the language they use particularly it is their own language, and which is they refer to most of the words are from the Sanskrit, and they use excess strong voice while speaking something, as you follow the Sanskrit. And as far occupation of this Tharu tribe community concerned, and they have particularly they have cultivation one of their major occupation. They produce different crops, wheat, major, rice, okay? And particularly they also find every house there is dogs, pigs, goat. They generally consider these are their domestic animals, and they will find in every house. And most of them follow Hindu religion, but some of them also follow Christianity, Buddhism, as well as the animism forms of, they believe in the animism as well. And this, their household, particularly the deities in the household, particularly find to protect them from the diseases as well as misfortune, which is considered as a disadvantage, particularly which is considered as a, means there is a concept called Tharu, and this Tharu also have their own deities within their own, so that they can prevent it from the disease or any disaster activity, or any misfortune incidents. And the tribal community in the of this state particularly mainly known for shamans and who act as a doctor in the community. So in their community there is a doctor, we call them asans, who actually act like a doctor to help the diseases as well as out of the community. There is another type, Bhutia, and this Bhutia tribal community sect of Uttarakhand is mainly found in the district of Almora, Chamoli, and Pithogarh, Uttarkasi district of Uttarakhand. And they are a community of the earlier settlers in Tibet region, particularly, who are migrated to Himalaya region latter phase. And these Bhutias are known as particularly Morchas, as well as in Uttarkasi it is called Chadas. So you'll find different name of this tribe group. They can roughly classified belong to five major group. The called is Brahmana, the Niti, the Johar, the Dharma, Bayans, okay? And these are the sub groups of these tribe groups, and generally they live in high altitude region of the mountains. And to look into before the historically, before Chinese took over the Tibet region, the Bhutians particularly, who are really, sorry, who are enterprising people actually, more into the business, carried on wide scale of trade with the Tibet in wool, fabrics, skins, okay, which has been totally disturbed after it was acquired by the China. And their cultivation is another forms of occupation, and they generally follow the primitive style. And then their main, another they produces the jute, and there's the seeds of the goats are their main stew, which provide the hide food, which makes them move into the trade. And the trade of articles or leathers made from these from the domestic animals or rice, wheat, other foodstuff as well. So Hinduism, they follow the Hinduism as well as their influence there. They worship Nanda Devi, and they also worship their own set of gods, which is more focused on animism. And marriage are arranged by parents generally, and who exercise full control over the selection of mates as well as how they will be going to perform that. And there hardly any find any property with them, except few domestic animals with them. So there is another tribe called Butsa tribe, and this Butsa tribe of Uttarakhand reside in the south western part of the state, and mainly in the region of particularly Nainital, Ramnagar, Ganeshpur, and there is not much knowledge about this tribe due to lack of exploration. But it is believed that the tribes share a common language, similar to early inhabitants of the Indo-Aryan group in the region. And etymologically, the term Bursa, what we refer to as a tribe, leads to number of stories, number of narratives in their formation, and to prove particularly exactness to the appellation used in the tribal commission. So they refer to this as one of the appellants they used. And from that, they coined the term Buksha. And this is to the region that the Buksha ancestors are believed to have long beards similar to that of a goat, and hence it is named as books. So different stories associated with the name. Apart from that, the racial and anthropological analysis of this Butsa tribal group, particularly the Butsa tribe, is considered to have similarity as well as resemblance uh, to a society of lower Hindu caste. So there is a thinker called J.S. Pure. If you look into, they consider this tribal as uh, lower Hindu as well. So like this, the Butsa tribe is also considered this racial anthropological analysis. They consider it a lower caste, and these books as believe in Hinduism worship Hindu gods and goddesses. They celebrated all the festivals which concern with the Hindu religion and devoted follower of Lord Krishna and Lord Rama. And the Buksha community, particularly, is an enormous society, enormous community, and is divided into various of according to their dwelling style, dwelling structure, and which is the dwelling structure popularly known as Kheraj. And marriage among this Buxa tribe particularly are done through the consent of the bride as well as groom, and it is patriarchal in nature as well as the main occupation of this uh, Buxa tribe is agriculture and other agriculture related or associated jobs particularly. And if you look into, there is another tribal group, Raji tribe, and they are mainly found in the forest region of Didihar, uh, Champanwad areas of Pitrugad region, Pitrugad district, and they are considered to be the original. Everyone consider is the original settler of that particular region, and the people of this tribal group particularly are considered to be the most backward, underdeveloped, and primitive in all the sense of Aji tribe, and they are currently living under very miserable condition as well as diverse life, miserable as well as diverse life, deteriorated conditions. They reside mainly in the deep forest regions, inaccessible. You can talk about distance from the mainland or the mainstream society. Apart from these disadvantages, this tribal have also developed taste of several foods. They have, we can tell, originated different forms of taste of different wild foods and as well as tree roots. And the traditional care of this tribal community, whether it is male or female, it's unique, and there they show a distinct way of particularly different tribal people. You identify them very easily if they are going around, and they called especially, they also particularly, they have their own religious system we talked about, and this Raji females were also quite large and heavy jewelry, have a recent phenomena but anthropologist and sociologist culture. Few of these Raji tribes dress in similar fashion like that of people belonging to the North tribal community. You will not find nowadays, but the traditional attire. And one of the remarkable about this Raja tribe is that so they have ardent follower of Hindu religion. Uh, they have their local god as well, local god and goddess whom they worship in different occasions. And the position of women, particularly in this Raja tribe, is held high, not only in particular position but also in responsibility as well as status. And like other tribal group, where particularly unlike other tribal group, Raju women who hold a higher position in the family structure, marital life, social structure. Most of this Raju tribe have built their settlement in the interior region of the forest, and it is only natural, particularly natural that these Raju tribe have taken up profession of gatherers and forest gatherers particularly. So their profession are moves around the forest they mentioned. So comes to the tribes of Uttar Pradesh. If you look into Uttar Pradesh particularly, it is the most you can talk populous state of the country, and as well as the most populous sub-national unit. And Uttar Pradesh has an important place in culture of India, for it considered as the particular birthplace of Hinduism. And the state has a rich heritage in the context of craft, cottage industries, various type of employed skill like craftsmen, artisan in fine. And while locating to the tribes, particularly as such of Uttar Pradesh, they are from an integral part of the particularly different district and the culture for the culture of their own. There are the tribals like Tharu, Chansari, Raji, Bhutia, Kond, Bhusha are the six major tribal groups we find in Uttar Pradesh particularly. Though there are major sub division of this tribal group, but there are majorly six tribal groups, and they are mainly found in the present state of. There are few which have also been found in the few state of Uttarakhand. So the present state of Uttarakhand and the tribal population particularly of Uttar Pradesh mostly lived in the hill areas, particularly hill region of Uttar Pradesh, and it comprise a very small percentage of the entire population of the state. And if you look into their particularly one socioeconomic profile and occupation particularly of this of the tribal groups of Uttar Pradesh, as concerned, it has been found that most are dependable on the forest. They are more laborious dimension. They particularly so we find a different mixed nature of occupation among the different tribal groups. And liquor is considered among the most favorite among all the tribals. Means homemade liquor, what we call the rice being tribal language, which is very popular local drinks for them. And the Pura and Rajatai, whatever it is, the tribal depend mainly on wild fruits and their roots for their daily consumption. And the tribes of Uttar Pradesh have their own religious belief, faith. Interestingly, they also worship many healthy gods and goddesses. For instance, the whole tribe of Banda region worship Ram, Sita, Lakshman because of the belief that their food is associated with their culture, and they visited Chitrikot that way. And this Uttar Pradesh tribals of Uttar Pradesh follow the patrilineal and patriarchal structure of society, and yet women of the tribe enjoy a dominant status in the tribal society. So, if you look, if you go into details of this tribal group, there is a tribal called Buksa. And this Buksa tribe speak Buksa language, they are the ruling language, they call this Buksa, and which belongs to Indo-Aryan language with fluency. And this Buksa tribe particularly concentrated in several districts located in southern part of the state of Uttar Pradesh, and total population of Buksa around 4,700 something, which is very less. As far as language is concerned, particularly most of the Buksa tribe converse with the Buksa language only, and societal structure of this Buksa communities were quite traditional, and uh, the only minimum changes you will find, only minimum changes you will find to the impact of modernization as such. You will not find any big changes within that community. And since this also have stock in their usual tradition. They don't want to change generally. And when their customs, they have developed antipathy towards the modern age. So I are quite reluctant to adopt the modern lifestyle, modern facilities which are provided, as well as the modern medical system. They believe in the traditional knowledge as well. They believe in the traditional forms of medicine, whatever uh, provided by the medical helper, their medical helper, who is their own system of medicine on the basis of traditional knowledge to cure the disease. And there is another tribal called Gondu, and Gond, you can talk about Gondus. These are the Dravidian tribe they refer to, and they are the largest populated tribe in South Asia, particularly, and as well as in the state. And these Gondo refer to tribal who live in the India's Deccan, particularly peninsula. And scholars believe that Buddha settled in the Gondwana, now known as Madhya Pradesh, and between the 9th and 8th, 30, between the 9th and 13th century AD, and different writers, particularly Muslim writers, describe rise of Gunda state after the 14th century, and Gunda kings particularly came to be established in Kerala, Devgod, and different other regions of the state. And particularly, if you look into their society, particularly, and they can be divided into three major classes. One is aristocracy, they called it the Raja Gundus, and who have the supreme power. And there is another society they called it tenant, particularly those Gundas who depend upon tenant activities. And the another society they call Kamya Gundas, and they are particularly laborers. So this society is divided into three parts, and they particularly follow their own distinct religious culture. Like many other tribes, Kunda worship their own god, Baradio, and which alternative name Bhagwan what we call. So they depend upon their own god, they depend on nature, worship nature particularly. And if you look into their family structure, particularly they marry outside of their clan group, and typically they choose their marriage mates, particularly by the tribal council. Means they have their tribal council, they have their chieftainship. Actually, they approve and particularly choose whether someone is going to marry or not, if they are marrying to marry. So particularly if you look into food pattern, they generally millet, and there generally find two type of millet in their region. One is kodo and kutki, and particularly there is staple diet, as well as the culture and crafts and hobbies are something different, and they love to song, they love to dance, and love and song they are associated with in particularly different, particularly religious activities. And then comes to another tribe. There is a Tharu tribe, and this Tharu are the one of the largest tribal community found in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Also, they reside in the interior jungles or the forest, due to which they don't have any influence on the outer world. So there is a lack of access to as well. A large majority of them are found in Nepal. Means they are part of the Nepali group of people, they have Nepal culture. And these days, the Tharu have became farmers, practice cultivation, different variety of cultivation. They produce particularly barley wheat, major rice. They also engage themselves in rearing animals, particularly to chickens. And they have also developed into good fishermen as well, because they don't have land. So they adopted different method of to live their life. And the language of this Tharu tribal communities, particularly, uh, is beautiful to talk about. It is derived from the Sanskrit word, and they are strongly built and are dark in color. The physical appearance of this Tharu tribal group, and have gained resistance to both diseases like malaria because they lived in the forest. They have strongly developed their complexion, So generally they are resilience toward the disease as well. And this Tharu tribal community has developed practice of worshipping indigenous gods, indigenous deities as well as other religion. Mostly they follow Hinduism as well. Although maximum Tharu tribal follow Hinduism, there are quite handful of people who also follow Islamic as well. And so you find a different religious belief and practices in the community. And the Tharu society, particularly called is Samans, hold a place of prominence. And those Samans who act as a doctor, means Saman here refers to doctor in the Tharu community. And the Saman who act as a doctor is called Guruba also, and may cause use some of the Buddhist medicine. So mostly they depend upon Buddhism as well as for the but in the context of medicine and medicinal plants for curing of the diseases. And since believe that diseases can be cured easily, they believe that if the God are pleased. So if God is not pleased, the diseases cannot be cured mm, from a individual, from a group. So particularly they wants to defeat the evil spirit in their villages and summons those who are engaged as a doctor in this community to beat drums, offer sacrifice to please the gods and defeat the evil. So they are not only believing different religion, they have their own religion, they have their own doctor who actually act as a not only doctor but also a priest in the region. There is another tribe they called it Raja tribe, and these Raja tribe are socially and economically most underdeveloped in nature, and they are one of the several tribes found in India who lived in the most underdevelopment condition. So we find them as property, illness, all these things. They are also described as one Rawat, king of the jungle, wild man, one Manus, one Raji, royal people of the jungle. So they are considered as the man of jungle and they claim for their origin from the Rajputs and they consider themselves to be the original inhabitant in the central Himalayas. They also multilingual, speak language of different origin, but they also, particularly Tibetan-born Indo-Aryan, okay, they also use Hindi when communicating with the outsider as well. And they use Devanagari script particularly for writing and they are believed to be descendant of Kirats who ruled the area in prehistorical times. So they consider they are the Rajas of the hill, Rajas of the forest. They belongs to forest. They are the forest man. Okay, all this. And Rajis are underdeveloped people because the lack of education. We find illiteracy rate is very low. Sorry, illiteracy rate is very high. Literacy rate is very low. We find poverty and several tribes of this community have got addiction toward alcohol, which is a major concern now for the government. And apart from that, they are also developed the taste of several wild foods, wild tree roots, which is unique in nature. And these tribal groups actually converse with each other in their own language, which is they called it Raji language. So if they are communicating with outside, they follow the Hindi language. What is remarkable, what is important, what is noticeable about this Raja tribe, that though they are particularly follower of Hindu religion, there is some patch of local gods and goddess you find in their worship. And whereas looking into the position of women, particular status of women, it is held high. Once again, they are secure in good position, they have in good place and social structure. People generally, their status is at a higher place. And in matter of marriage, Raji females have enough power and authority to choose their marriage or choose their particularly partners. And there is another type, Jonsari tribe, and particularly Jonsari tribe gets special mention in the different scriptures as they enjoy highest number of people in this region. They also consider. And the tribal have share a very good relation with other tribal groups and one finds no difficulty in identifying these tribes who has got silent body feature and resemble that both of Mongoloid clan as well as the Indo-Aryan. So it is a mixture of two group in Mongoloid and Indo-Aryan, and they are mostly settled in Himalaya province to sustain their life. To their look into their occupation. Majority of this tribal group have taken up the profession of laborers who are diligently in the forest round, farms of the rich people. So sure they never, particularly they never owned the land. They could not adapt the cultivation method as a practice. So particularly they are depend upon others for their livelihood. And marriage also plays an important role, vital role in the life of both of this male and female of this Janshari tribal community. Uh, they practice polyandry method particularly. And while talking about the festivals and fairs are integral part of people's Janshari tribal community. Vishu is one type of fair or the festival making the harvesting time they used to, and it is quite significant one for them. And song dance are particularly part and parcel of their daily life. Particularly both men and women dance in any festival, and as well as some songs in different times. And these Tonsa tribe have developed a faith in several deities, and Mahasu Detta is one of the principal deities in each and every tribe of this community worship. And the devotee bring out the processing every year in the month of August, showing their reverence to Mahasu, particularly Mahasu Detta. So these are the tribal groups. If you look into whether it is Uttar Pradesh, whether it is Uttarakhand, whether it is Rajasthan, okay, you'll find a different forms of tribal community which is different from the north as well as from the Jammu Kashmir to particularly to the northeast regions. And if you look into as such Rajasthan tribal community, and this tribal community particularly its origin classification, this tribal group have lot of common feature into. And they enjoyed a land owning group of people adopted to agriculture as one of the main occupational practice. Whereas if you look into Uttarakhand, on the other hand of the state, one of the states have heavily depend and culturally rooted tribal group. The five major tribal who are lived in Uttarakhand are different in specific to their own community that constitute their own lifestyle and personality. These major tribal of Uttarakhand particularly have their origin to be traced to the Indo-Aryan community. Whereas if you look into Uttar Pradesh, you will find some Mongoloid community as well. And in Uttar Pradesh, whatever tribal group you find, they live mostly in the forest region, and they mostly engage in the labor activity. They don't have land as such, and they have their distinct dialect, particularly you find, and the religious, most of them practice their own religious belief. So we'll take 5 to 10 minute break. Then we'll start about development displacement and about migration among tribals as well as the impact of globalization on the tribal communities. Take rest another 15 to 5 to 10 minutes. Welcome once again. So now we'll discuss about particularly uh, displacement and migration of tribes. So displacement and migration, in looking to both the words, it has a distinct meaning, but it has a interrelation between both the terms in the forms of concept as well as in the forms of practice. And if you look into displacement, it is generally considered as the displacement refers to physical dislocation of a community of individual you can talk about. It is being, when you talk about displacement particularly, it is much more associated with the development project, and tribal has a special connection with that. And particularly it results, particularly the displacement results in vital equal income. Comfort you can talk about, advertisement you can talk about, and it threatens the existence as well as identity of people. Those who are being going to be affected, those who are going to be displaced, okay. And there are different connotation in displacement like displaced person, affected person, partially affected person. So anyone will be affected from the displacement. And there is a process of disposition in the displacement, and it is estimated that in around last 65 years after independence of India, around 60 to 7 million displaced person will find in the country. And according to a study, it is also estimated that 20% of the displaced person did not get proper rehabilitations, okay, and more than 75% still in the runs. And if you look into the migration particularly as such, and it is not a new phenomenon. Most of the tribal has been migrated from the different regions, and neither it is not going to be end in the near future. Ever since the existence of humanity, human beings have been still migrating from one place to another. And if you look into the archaeological, anthropological data and literature, it indicates that early human beings are migrated from one place to another for security, for their livelihood, for their stability. So it is an ongoing process for them. And okay. So, and tribals is not apart from that, they are also moving from one place to other for the livelihood, for the stability, for the economy, or due to other reasons actually. So, if we talked about displacement as such, and whether it is literature and sociology, literature and anthropology, literature and Indian economic, industrial development, there is never ending story of displacement. We find number of stories on displacement particularly and displacement associated rehabilitation and resettlement of the different groups in India. And whatever reports available particularly, it indicates that around 21 million people are internally displaced in our country due to development projects. So what are the development projects? It may be dam, it may be industry, it may be highway, it may be hydropower projects. So it can be any so which is in favor of national interest. And although they make up 8% of the total population of our country, more than 50% among them are the tribals. 50% are tribal because most of the tribal lived in the forest rich regions, and these forest rich regions have particularly have deposit of natural resources, whether it is coal, whether it is iron ore, whether it is particular bauxite, any other, whether it is gold as well. And but the data says until 1990, about 85 55 lakhs of tribal people have been displaced from their homeland. But in the context of rehabilitation and resettlement, RR, policy what we talked about generally always remain a neglected aspect in the context of tribal dispute. They never settle some. They never settle. Once they are settled, once again there is another process. So it is a continuous affair for them now. And these whatever the figures or the data must be gone much higher, which need to be updated because after 90 and 95 there is no data available regarding the displacement of tribal population. So until 1990 and 1995, we find some of the data associated with particularly uh, the number of displacement of the tribe, both for the general society as well as for the tribal communities. And um, the development, what we consider the displacement take place for that, and development according to the Constitution of India is the process of governance which, while respecting human rights, all persons secure to all Indian freedom from material impoverishment. Foxy, one of the thinker, believed that was working on development and displacement, believed that in the planning process of India, the spirit of constitution has been destroyed, betrayed. People are no partner in the process of decision making, establishing any development project in the region. Okay, whether particularly people are no partner in the process of decision making regarding construction of whether dam, its size, its area of submerged, particularly whether cost benefit analysis, resource allocation, design, all those, they never particularly consulted to the community, those who are going to affect it. So that's why mostly involuntary forms of displacement quite prominent in these tribal regions, and this involuntary displacement of sites of community existence is always problematic in nature, and consequent dislocation of human being is much too high in tribal areas. And the Land Acquisition Act 1894 talks about the public purpose. If there any investment for public purpose, whether it is dam, road, whether it is hydropower project, whether it is industry, and there should be compensation those who are actually displaced or going to lose their lands or homes. But when whole village are submerged, people who have no land particularly are also displaced. So money compensation is one component actually at that time. But here in 2013 there is a RR policy, rehabilitation and resettlement policy. If you look into this rehabilitation and resettlement policy, particularly of India, and if you look into compensation, there is a one component is compensation, and policy provide a fair compensation to people of displaced land. Those who have those land have been acquired or other involuntary displacement. The compensation can include land, house, particularly monetary it can be monetary compensation, skill training, okay, for the livelihood in new place. Then there should be a social impact assessment. Means before starting a project, government or concerned agency need to go for impact assessment study, both social and environmental. Here they have to assess the impact of the industry on the society. How many people going to be displaced? What are the impact? How many lands? How many trees? Okay, what are the natural setup, flora and fauna? All those. Then there should be a grievance redressal system. Okay, so which they will allow whether that particular company or the project will take off or not. And it is based, it is a community consultation process. Then there should be consent from the people who are going to be affected from the process. There should be transparency. There should be transparency in the process of land acquisition, and there should be public information system particularly, and there should be impact evaluation of how many impact going to be uh, particularly means social impact evaluation, evaluate the efficacy of the RR policy as well as whatever, particularly in the context of the community, and it is a community development activity. However, earlier it was not there, now it is more streamlined, so maybe it will benefit the community at large. And if you look into the affected people particularly, it is important to when there is a development project, both you will find a displaced person and affected person. And in context of the affected person, the important ask question is what and how of displacement. But more important question, why and who. And displacement, they consider is a process where poorer section are pushed out of their own habitat. It is a situation where the marginalized people have no other choice but move from one village or the place of origin to another place. So the local inhabitants particularly lose their command over the resources, whether it is forest resources, whether it is common property resources. Apart from this immediate economic loss, uh, displacement also brings so economic loss in the sense of their livelihood, their land, their agricultural field, their forest product you can talk about, okay? Their learning day-to-day earning, but they also particularly it also the displacement also brings social, cultural, and psychological dislocation of the members who are displaced. And the physical displacement, particularly of the people, leads to their uprooting from their socio-cultural base because these tribal people mostly believe in forest, the jungle, and jam. They believe three elements are crucial to their lifestyle. So they most of the thing they attach to jungle, and jamin, the socio-cultural aspect, and which is actually hampered or uprooting from their socio-cultural aspect. It is quite we can talk about disadvantages for them, and they lose their traditional mechanism, traditional knowledge of social control. As a result, social tension, social conflict you will find everything. At the same time, the alienation of these tribal people from the land and the forest was one of the main reason of many tribal groups, particularly for the movement. Tribal, you find good number of tribal movement in India and mostly associated with the alienation of land from their homeland. So land is considered to them as the one of the sacred element, and because it is the resources for the substance, or particularly for their sustainable livelihood. And about 70% of Indian population, most of them who are tribals, are primarily depend upon the land, particularly for whether it is community owned, whether it is their own particularly individually owned land, but as they are more into the cultivation and agriculture. The land for them is a means of livelihood, means of substance, means of their day-to-day activity, and it is they have much more relations with the socio-economic, socio-cultural, socio-religious relationship with land, and alienation from the land, okay, throwing out them from the land, and displacement have been threatened their sustainable livelihood system of the millions of tribal community sites in India, and people are displaced without any consultation, without any participatory approach, which is part of our government. Further, if you look at they are denied their rightful access to the resources as well. Share they lost as well and a very large number of people, those who are displaced belong to scheduled caste as well as scheduled tribe. And apart from that, if you look another section, it is the women who are the worst sufferer in the case of displacement, and there is no mention in the policy as well. So those who are more vulnerable, we need to look into them as well. But it is not the case in the present context of development displacement policy. And victims of displacement who are deprived of compensation or resettlement for the loss of their land, homes, their forest, their government property, and generally do not possess any document to claim their land because it is always a community land and it is always for a traditional forms of land. Okay? And moreover, even if they lost and does not belong to them, tribal dependency on forest land, particularly river, mountain, or the natural resources, non-timber forest, which actually sustain them. So they don't have right on them, so that's why there is a chances of livelihood vulnerability, insecurity towards livelihood as well, and negative impact of the globalization and industrialization. It is a part of the discussion we can talk about, and it is a larger process, the larger structure of displacement. Through the corporate or companies are affecting these tribal and deprived communities across the country and especially located in tribal areas because when we talk about tribal areas, it is resource rich in nature and this community, tribal community are being threatened with massive mining activity, industrialization, hydropower projects leading to large scale displacement you can notice in our Indian history. And the survival rights of these groups are related to food, livelihood, customary practice, traditional knowledge of it form the community identity and goes beyond the state administration, and which is a major challenge as well. And the recent development, if you look into intervention, if you look into, have led to major setback of the existence of this all these people threatening to their survival due to large scale displacement and mining activity in their regions. And one of the important issues that are attached to displacement is rehabilitation and resettlement. Okay, and it is one of the development paradigm which is actually implemented to restore to the normal way of life. However, it is you can talk about daydream. Okay, and displacement is considered inevitable for development. It is always a progressive for the policymakers, and displacement is not taken at last resort. They particularly, even in the case of displacement, the last resort, rehabilitation is the second. So never they consider rehabilitation as the primary aspect. And the policy, the RR policy, but does not seem to recognize the historically customary traditional rights or the cultural rights of the tribal communities. And policy is insensitive towards the multiple displacement. Like I'll give an example, a good example. Uh, there is a particular dam, Kulab Dam, which is, I think, established around, it is in Koraput district of Odisha. And people have been displaced, alienated from the land to the establishment of dam due to the dam has somewhat around good number of lands and lot of people have been displaced from their original land, homeland. But after that, there is two another industry come up, particularly HAL and particularly you can talk about NALCO. HAL is a defense industry and NALCO is a aluminum industry, and both are once again displaced the same people who are displaced from the polar dam. So in that context, there is a multiple displacement you can find. So there is no policy how to look into to this multiple displacement. Those were displaced frequently from their homeland. So there is no assurance of these particular project affected policies from the earlier project to not be displaced again. The policy is insensitive towards them. There is no assurance, particularly the displaced person, the project affected persons. So as well as the policy is gender insensitive. So there is a fault in the case of policies. If you look into the inner contradiction, particularly the notion of development as such, by disposing the tribal of the land is contradictory in forms. The government is aware of the particularly psychological, sociological trauma you can talk about. And besides deprivation, displacement of the lands, livelihood, resources is quite challenging. And if you look into the participation and decision making, particularly at the present, people are more concerned in the setting of the project. The affected people are not particularly involved in the government process, and displacement is taken for granted is considered. The assumption is that people most of them who are powerless should adjust themselves in the situation once a decision displacement is taken place. There is no cost benefit analysis. You can talk about due to discipline, there is restriction of the livelihood of the poor. This happened because of the non-participatory decision-making process. Though lots of been said that about the socio-cultural aspect in the rehabilitation policy, it appears as if only the marketable commodities of the economy are taken into consideration. And another major challenge is the lack of database. The absence of database is one of the reasons for poor rehabilitation, and the project needs accurate data on the number and type if it is resettle them properly. But you will not find any data on that. Beside the performance of particularly displacing agency, those who are working to displace the people that is put in charge of rehabilitation as well, is judged not by its extent or quality of work, but by the speed and economic efficiency. So, which is another major challenge. Since most of the displaced person or project affected person are voiceless, they're tribal, they are shy in nature, they ignore their roots. And moreover, most of them are depend upon the community property resources, but they called CPR, and sustain themselves from the community property resources, and which particularly by rendering service to the village as a community. And they did not find any compensation for that as well. Moreover, even if you look into the financial aspect, is attained to the psychological consequences such as alienation from one culture, one religious aspect to the other, into new world culture actually ignored. They never restored that. As a result, many of those forced into new work culture, new economy, often outside of the region, outside of their culture, fall into the bondage of become victim of particularly alcoholism, which make more unsustainable towards them, to our culture, to our day-to-day activity, to our livelihood. And we need an alternative policy as well, how can relocate these people or perfectly resettle them in a habitat condition. So there is no cost benefit analysis as well. It is estimated that or cost benefit analysis when we talk about estimates of total of the equivalent value of financial, social, cultural, religious, environmental, psychological, and so on of the cost and benefit of the project to establish their worth. This project may be a government project such as dams, highway, infrastructure, mining, industries, defense, wildlife, can be capacity building program. That should be. And education programs should be, healthcare system should be developed, employment schemes should be restructured, so on, so that it will be easy for particularly while talking about resettlement policy. And the idea is to assess whether the amount allocated to them on the basis of our policy spent on a project is worth or and the cost in terms of benefit to the group of persons it's meant for. So accordingly, the cost benefit analysis should be calculated. And if you look into the migration aspect of the tribal community, there is a thinker called M.S. Rao. And migration is a shift in the place of residency for some lengthy time, we called it. And while it excludes particularly short visit tools, it include different type of both voluntary and involuntary movement. Example of involuntary movement are migration, under such crisis situations like war, transport of population, routes, floods, droughts, particularly earthquake or cyclones. Whereas there are other situations of migration where movement is a part of people's day-to-day life. There are nomadic you can talk about, shifting cultivation you can talk about, particularly artisan, businessmen, laborers, they are associated with this type of migration. And when talked about internal and international forms of migration, and internal migration is related to international migration either overseas or abroad. And the latter creates a balance in certain region in labor supply particularly. Internal migration counts as an answer. Whereas in the case of international migration is a part of global crisis or global social system and of communication, capital, resources, goods and services, which have development of consequence for both sending and receiving countries, including socio-economic conditions, population stocks, and population growth. And Rao particularly observed that there are two aspects of this. First, what happens to the migrant in the place of destination, how they adjust themselves, and the kind of social consequence they follow. And in the second context, Rao argued that there are feedback affect migration in the place of origin of the migrant, and the continued interaction process between the place of origin and place of destination is an essential aspect of migration study. And migration is considered to be the function of labor reallocation in response to the market demand, so that the demand and supply labor are always at equilibrium in place. Migration is also considered as an investment capital involving cost benefit analysis at different levels. At the individual level, particularly, it is argued that migration is based on careful calculation involving both money as well as non-monetary aspects. And if you look into the pattern of migration, we will find involuntary, voluntary, and transhuman migration. And involuntary migration particularly refers to migration under crisis, such as war, transfer of population, wars, floods, cyclones, drought, earthquakes, construction of particularly project. It also include marriage migration. Talked about if someone marries someone, they settle somewhere else. Then new local forms of marriage, transfer migration required. And voluntary migration generally refers to people who out in search of livelihood, and it includes particularly shifting cultivation trades, salesmen job, artisan laborers, where a transhuman migration particularly it is a special type of migration between two set of settlement in different regions. And we can look into also different other forms of like rural to rural, rural to urban, urban to rural forms of migration. And there is another thinker called Malvika Kalukar and has categorized migration into four sections. And these are permanent migration, temporary migration, seasonal migration, as well as the return migration. So the permanent migration generally refers to someone migrant move from the area of homeland for a lifetime through some contact with the place of origin is maintained through visit or occasion of the marriage or something. A temporary form of migration, the migrant who remain out of their home for a few months in a year or in any category, this category. And in seasonal, it is related to short-term stay somewhere, normally under a year, outside the place of residency or home by which are the substance review. And it is likely to be repeated in coming years as well for the related for general daily activity or like. Whereas return migration, particularly different member of the same family migrated to outside their place of residency to earn some money per family, and the feature common among Mexican region families actually. And if you look into the migration from the tribal areas of the tribal society, and in light of the above categories, whatever we have discussed particularly, whether it is seasonal or temporary or permanent migration, voluntary or transhuman migration or rural to urban, rural to rural or urban to rural. And the migration of travel from central and eastern have been divided into three categories particularly. Seasonal migration, then permanent migration to the large cities, seasonal migration to the nearby towns, as well as relay migration, family members going out in town to learn the library. And the migration of tribals from the region or place of origin is not voluntary. In India, generally, it is always involuntary in nature, and in fact, they are forced out due to ecological degradation, landlessness, and land alienation, unemployment, and poverty. However, a propelling factor in such migration is to ensure survival for himself and herself as well as their family member. And we look into the cause and consequences of migration particularly. And particularly, there is a thinker called Lee and has emphasized the role of pull factor as well as push factor associated with particularly tribal migration. And they consider push factor or those associated with the area of origin and intervening the obstacles such as ethnic barrier, distance, cost, personal factors to explain the migration of people from one area to another. The pull factor, if you look into, it includes employment opportunity in the cities, urban areas, and push factor include labor surplus with low productivity, rural areas, distributes unemployment, and the exploitative relation between it that exists in the particular village system. So these are the pull and push factor we talked about. However, Rao talked about has also pointed out different pull and push factors and pointed out that isolated variable cannot adequately explain the region of migration. However, hence he has the Rao has taken the multidimensional approach for analyzing migration in tribal area. In Rao, in Rao's way, Rao's conception of Rao's, he has identified the different key factors that are associated with multidimensional approach of migration in tribal areas. First, the historical development of the region. Second, wider economic and political condition, and which regulated particularly the condition of nature, employment, and opportunity, economic and social condition in the place of origin, at individual level, where the level of skill, uh, family circumstances, process of socialization, personality factor, and presence of resource network, such as social network, which act as a most the effective channel of communication that favor decision of making the migration. If you look into the consequences, so it has a good number of consequences, negative consequences as well as positive consequences on the tribal population. The impact of migration, particularly on the people of the place of destination, can be analyzed in the major four way. First, they talk about which discrimination, so they particularly migrate to the region, exploitation, then sexual harassment, then vulnerable migrant child or girls in particular, further our own as well, the destruction of culture, key network, and so these are the major actually factor at the place of destination. Whereas if you look into the particularly other factors, while highlighting the impact of migration on the women, Fox pointed out that male migration actually enhance both physical and financial burden on the women in terms of overwork, leading to the poor health and effectiveness of these communities. In the absence of male in the home, particularly those who are migrated, women have also responsibility toward looking to children, home care, their animal, particularly domestic animals, and doing household work, which further burden them particularly. And women have looked for the job as well as a wage labor we are engaging with surrounding villages, which puts her at the risk of physical and economic exploitation of the outside. And if you look into the major features of displacement and migration are both are interrelated. There is interrelationship, and from sociological and anthropological perspective, although some of the voluntary and some of the involuntary displacement and migration you find, and there is serious lacuna on the count of government you can talk about, in the counts of policies you can talk about regarding to RR policy, rehabilitation and resettlement policy, and there are inner contradiction within the policy as well, and which needs to be strengthened for better delivery of our policy. And the victim do not have any participation in the process of development project. There is no close relationship between displacement and migration, which can be derived from this in particular. However, we will find synonymous terms as well, and displacement is one of the main factors responsible for the forced migration. And there is a many pattern of migration you can find, which has been dealt with briefly. We have discussed already. Apart from the cause of migration, what are the major consequences, and uh, whether it is social, whether it is cultural, whether it is economic, whether it is social, or whether it is psychological. So it will into one of the aspects, one is displacement, and another impact you can talk about how the globalization process actually impacted these tribal communities. And if you look into the globalization perspective, since the beginning of civilization, you can talk people have used to plant medicines. And perhaps in the early period, traditional period, plants were believed to have healing power. And a discussion of human life this panel will not be complete without the role of plant. A complete record of the thousands of plant species under human function group volumes of particularly, and historians as well and anthropologists have written good number of books or articles on that. And there is ethnobotany concept and has a roots in the botany actually, and the study of plant. And if you look into particularly this thing, there is a folk medicine, medicine of the community you can talk about, and mostly it is the knowledge has been with the traditional healers, or you can talk about traditional peoples or tribal people. And coming to Indian science particularly, it is reported that India hopes to popularize the folk medicine, which is of the tribals particularly. And the government of India also launches various different programs to look into these folk medicines. And this local medicine procedure practiced by tribal across India, we are trying to, the government is trying to document, scientifically validate them as well. And the particularly look into these are mostly the traditional peoples or tribal people, and they wants to clear their diseases from this, particularly through traditional knowledge from the forest, from the plant, which is quite ancient people. Still, people, various tribal people practice this form. They have their own doctor who are knowledgeable about the plants, and particularly if you look into the economic cultural situation of the tribal today, the Constitution of India was came into exist actually during 1950. Prohibit discrimination against on the ground of religion, as all of you know, the ground of religion, race, caste, sex, so on community, but still you find cultural and economic discrimination in the tribal community from the British period to today. Okay, and if you look into the religious aspect, particularly the peoples have been relegated in low status they consider and isolated instead of being absorbed by majority of community. Introduction of capitalism, industrialization, private property, creation of countrywide market system by neglecting the traditional structure actually, and which is based on particularly value, customs, and all tribal community are not like that. And they are product of different historical and social conditions. They belong to different language families as well, several different racial stocks, religious models. They have kept themselves apart from this feudal state and Brahminical hierarchy of social hierarchy what we have in the society. But with the influence of modern society, with the influence of ancient society, their own religion has been, you can, their religion itself is unique, is, you can talk about it mostly depend upon nature, or particularly the belief in the nature, however it is transferred with the Christian missionary. People have been more associated with the Christianity. People now, they called him lower Hindu caste as the, so the originality of the religion has been depleted. And further, if you look into this tribal community, initially they are uh, settled in the hinterlands. And while we have established different development projects, we push them to mainland. Once again, they, due to their lack of skills, they are further pushed into the control poverty, further pushed into the underdevelopment, as well as we are pushing the further to the periphery region. And if you look into the Adivasi tribals and non-tribal and their relationship, and whether it is any other religion as well. There is good number of reference, good number of conflict you can find between the tribals and non-tribals, particularly looking into their land, water, and forest resources. Uh, if you look into particularly mainstream society and how it is related to tribal, the scientific culture, the education made available to some of the tribal have been improved their economic and education condition, as well as they have aware about different program policy of the government. Some of the new technology like radios, mobile phones, TVs have also changed their lifestyle. And such facilities, along with the constitutional safeguards, privileges, and welfare measures, benefit only a small uh, minority of the tribal community. And these privileges and welfare measures are denied to the majority of Adivasi due to their locational point of view. And the increasing number of estates while or the population you can talk about. Still, you will find most of the people lived in the forest or the underdeveloped regions. And despite positive political, institutional, financial commitment to the tribal development, they are presently largely displaced, dislocated, and biologically we can talk about decline of Adivasi community as well, and growing loss of genetic, cultural diversity, destruction of rich traditional knowledge, rich traditional resources as well, and which is also the forest resources are shrinking in the regions, and the knowledge of traditional community of this tribal have been deteriorated as well. And because no one is here to teach their offspring, the particularly the Adivasis have preserved around 90% of the country's biocultural diversity practice, which is also deteriorating day by day. And if you look into the particularly the alienation of tribals from the land, from their homeland, from their community property resources, particularly, which they depend upon. Their dependency upon these resources is much more. So, when there is a displacement, when there is a migration, actually, it is affecting their cities literally. And there are different studies that locate in only few Adivasi communities which are actually, if you look into the dwelling activities have not been displaced, very few, but most of the travel have been displaced from the forest. And those who are they consider depend upon them or substance activities. So whether it is Madhya Pradesh, whether it is Korapur, Fulbani, any part of the country, I'll few travel group who have been still forest dwellers and not displaced. And if you look into the particularly the development aspect, the struggle for the future of this tribal community, and the conceptual vocabulary used to understand the place of Adivasi in the modern world, particularly has been constructed on feudal, colonial, imperialistic attitude. And historically, if you look into the Adivasi tribals, unfortunately, are at best perceived subhuman to the wicked in isolation or primitive living in remote and backward region who should be civilized as of now. None of them have a rational bias. Consequently, the official and popular perception of tribal is merely that of isolation of the forest, tribal dialects, animism, primitive culture, primitive occupation, okay, all those. Contrast these with the self perception, make it nomadic habit, law, drink and dance. If you look into the Adivasi particularly, the significance of their substance economy in the midst of the profit of these companies or these development projects which oriented toward much more economy, has been devastated their substantial economy. And now the English education, the education system has been like we have Eklavya Model School, residential school actually, which is further moved them beyond the modern forms of education, which further deteriorated their traditional knowledge system because most of the students are staying in the residential, so they have a lack of knowledge on the particular traditional knowledge system. Okay, and if you look into scientific thinkers particularly, our worldview of culture promotes scientific spirit and temper, and the basic tenet of scientific culture as follows: the world is understandable, scientific ideas subject to change, scientific knowledge is durable, but we never consider their knowledge system. And coming to tribal situation, we can hope that scientific culture and the temper and evolution to respect humans as human, but we are not doing that. And irrespective of the region and culture, whether it is tribal or tribal, in this scientific temper has lived with humanistic ideas, which does not allow humanity to exploit it account of their status. But globalization and industrialization as such has been seriously impacted the culture and economy of the private society. They have been displaced, their language, their culture has been particularly degraded, as well as their traditional system. Okay, particularly it is due to relocation of their relocation from of this community from the original site from the habitats were rich in knowledge, rich in resources, with good number of you can talk about livelihood opportunity. So that so here we'll conclude. Uh, this is the last section, last class I think. So we'll end here. And thank you all. Team it out. Question. Anyone is here? Okay. Okay, we'll end here. Thank you all.